Welcome to the Daily Items one-on-one interview series. Today's guest is Line Mountain School District Superintendent Dave Campbell, interviewed by Justin Strawser.
Welcome to One-on-One. I'm Justin Strawser, and today we have Dave Campbell, the superintendent of Line Mountain School District, with us. Dave, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for asking.
We wanted to get some educators on here to talk a little bit about how the last year has been. I know you've been a superintendent for about 14 years. You said that you were in public education since 1989, was it?
Correct.
Okay. Where do you think this last 12 months falls in terms of challenging years over your career?
This is probably the most challenging I can recall as a young administrator or principal up in the South Williamsport district when there was a school shooting in the county. We got pretty intense on school security, safety, and that was a pretty tough year. But there's just, at least we could plan for most of the variables in that year. This year, you just have to be flexible.
So take us back. It's almost been a year since that fateful day, March 13th, when the state announced that schools were going to be shutting down for 2 weeks. What was running through your minds? What was running through everyone's mind there in charge at Line Mountain on that day?
I think the most difficult part of that is, like you alluded to, we were told 2 weeks. So we're figuring, the governor at that point in time said it's a mandated closure. Wasn't going to count against you. We were going to get through this, and then all of a sudden the 2 weeks went past, and we weren't back in. And I guess the toughest part was knowing what to do with the kids that weren't in school. There was still hope we were coming back, and then that hope started to fade. And by the time you got to that point, we then rolled out probably 3 or 4 weeks later a non-mandatory online because we just didn't have the kids prepared for that. So that was the most difficult part, just knowing there wasn't a whole lot we could do at that point in time just because of our location and planning with the kids with very limited access, data points, things like that.
Was there a feeling or sort of an inkling that maybe this 2 weeks isn't going to be it, or was there a hope there that we can do this in 2 weeks and then come back?
There was a hope, but I think deep down inside, a lot of the superintendents and administrators in the area thought this was going to go a little longer than 2 weeks. I don't think many of us. We were actually in a meeting, the 17 or 18 superintendents in the CSIU, thinking about what our plan is for the next week. What do we do with this? And one of the superintendents, I can't recall who it was, said the governor just made an announcement, we're closed. So it was.
I bet you guys started getting calls from all of us then.
Correct. As a matter of fact, Justin, I think you did call me, and I think you could probably go back in your emails and say, hey, I'm online with the superintendents, we just found out.
Now that you say that does sound familiar.
So it was a really tough time, but I think most of the people understood that it was an uncharted time, and we pretty much got a pass for the spring. So
one of the things that pops in my mind, and I know we've discussed it before, Line Mountain is huge. I think it's our largest district, if I'm not mistaken.
In your coverage area, yeah. We're about 158 square miles.
And that's a lot of farmland, that's a lot of sort of mountainous area, and so that speaks to the idea that the internet coverage is not that great in Line Mountain. I lose service going through, and I'm sure that was a concern for you as an educator for students.
Yeah, if you can take us back to that tough incident, February 8th of 2019, the swatting.
Oh, yeah.
The biggest issue for the incredible first responders was the communication piece. It's a no zone down there, and that was difficult. One of the other pieces I did fail to mention, we were pretty fortunate on March 13th last year. We were 2 days shy of finishing up the third marking period. And most people know that we were starting to get into the PSSA Keystone prep mode, and that just kills 2 weeks. So we had about 9 weeks of school left, and considering one of the weeks was the closure end of the school year and 2 for testing, it could have been a lot worse if it would have come in January. So all things considered, it could have been worse. But communication, you are right, and I think you have covered. The Daily Item has tried to do the best they can covering what they're trying to do in the area.
We've had articles.
About $4.5 million grant, and I don't know how far we've moved along, but I myself, I live in an area where cable is not run. And phone service, you've talked to me sometimes at night.
It's hard getting hold of you sometimes.
I can't move in my own house at times. That's how bad. And I'm exactly 5.5 miles from this spot we're at right now. I'm outside of Sunbury. And we had to get, of course my daughters were in college, and we had to get Viasat. We had to do something for them to be online.
Satellite?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's okay. But I think you see, I have to do my Zoom board meetings from my office because I do get kicked off even on the Viasat. So when you start coupling that with just me and no one else is allowed on when I'm doing something like that, now you get multiple kids in a household. It's a tough go for us with the virtual.
And I'm sure there's sort of some leeway for some of those students who can't access. I think I've talked to a few of those students who say we have to take turns on the internet and stuff like that. So and so if you want to maybe speak on that.
I think they've done their best. Our numbers for the online have been pretty low from this in comparison, and I don't. That's not because we're any better than anybody else. Mm-hmm. I think everyone knows our limitations. We're in a rural area. The only socialization kids get at times, we're the YMCA, we're the library, so it does. But come Monday, we're only going to have 17 at the elementary, 24 5th through 8th grade, and about 44 9th through 12th. So that's about 85, and that's a little less than 8% that are still doing the virtual online.
So today is the 4th. 5th, 6th, 7th, that's the 8th.
Yeah.
So on March 8th.
Yeah, by Monday, March 8th. And I think in the last week, and even with the governor's announcements yesterday and a couple weeks ago, kids need to be back in school, and there's that real push. That is probably brought back. We probably peaked at about 110, but because of those talks, 35 are coming back, and we're hoping some more. We're getting ready to start the 4th marking period. Obviously, it's right around that March 13th again. We're just about the end of the 3rd marking period.
Now, take us through some of the efforts of the administration of what you've done to stay within the guidelines.
I look at it, I know there was a lot of people concerned that we weren't getting enough guidance.
Okay.
I look at it, if you have to wear a mask, you wear a mask. If you're supposed to be 6 feet apart, you're supposed to be 6 feet apart. And there is leeway there. We can't always be 6 feet apart in all our rooms. I think the most important part that the administrative team and the board and stuff had to work through was just how we were going to do this. But the people that made it happen were the custodians, the cafeteria, and our teachers, the aides. I mean, they're the ones who had to find different ways to do things. We were just the facilitators. If it wasn't for the dedication, I mean, we forget about the people in the cafeteria. I mean, they are going. It's just a whole different ballgame. Kids can't serve themselves. Everything has to be pre-dished. Custodians, they're cleaning more, harder than ever, and they worry about keeping the school clean. The staff for our teachers to do what they did with the online, and as well as it's gone, I think if you talk to most of the kids that are doing it online, we are live. We are not asynchronous. We're synchronous. In our district, I'm very proud of our administrative team in putting a plan together, and we didn't do it alone. We're very fortunate to have several superintendents in this area. We met multiple times. Actually, a lot of the meetings we did on the island office at the Chickalimi district office.
Okay.
There was about 7 of us in there. We worked hard to try to come together with some ideas, and it was definitely reassuring to have a bunch of good people in the area working together. But from there, a plan is only as good as the people carrying it out, and I think we can fix and adjust the plan because of great people, and we've had some great people carry it out, and we've made adjustments to the plan. So I don't know if that totally answered what you wanted,
Yeah,
but
I think so. One of the efforts that springs to my mind was right after Thanksgiving and right after Christmas break, or Christmas break, both of those breaks. You guys decided to go remote.
yeah.
And I think that was probably a successful decision.
I would really say the one after Thanksgiving, Justin, that was like, and we've been fortunate. We haven't had a ton. I've made maybe 10 or 11 alert now calls saying we had a case in the school. But the Thanksgiving, that's one of my favorite holidays. It probably is my favorite holiday, and I think a lot of families, I think that was our high point of teachers having to quarantine, or they had COVID, students having to quarantine. We would have had a real issue that first week after Thanksgiving staffing. We barely got through that second week. We were at about 12 or 13 teachers out of 84 that were either quarantined or COVID positive. And the only reason we got through it was, not to sound cliche, it was a Herculean effort from the teachers covering and getting through it. The Christmas one, if I had a crystal ball and could have predicted it, you would think Christmas would have been just as difficult. I mean, forethought plan was a good idea, and we can go back. You can question every decision we make. We had less of an issue that week after Christmas, but probably in hindsight, we probably didn't have to do it. But after what we went through at Thanksgiving, we're thinking we're going to see that
Right.
big number again, and I'm just telling you, we didn't have near the numbers after Christmas than we did right after Thanksgiving.
Okay. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back talking to Dave Campbell of Lime Mountain School District.
We'll be back with more from Line Mountain School District Superintendent Dave Campbell after a short break.
We're back with 101, and we're talking to Superintendent Dave Campbell of the Lime Mountain School District. Now, before we left for the break, we were talking about some positive cases and whatnot. How much effort does it take to do the contact tracing? Is that a pain?
Very fortunate. Our school nurses and principals, and at the high school, a guidance counselor, and I believe a guidance counselor at the elementary are helping with that. And our assistant principal at the high school, they've been just so thorough. And so much credit goes to our nurses. I mean, they've been contacting the Department of Health, getting the answers from there, from that situation. It is time consuming, depending on when that student was last in school. Sometimes we get lucky and there's no one to contact trace. Yeah.
I saw a couple of those releases that you've had.
Yeah. I think the highest we've gone, you could probably see it too on the internet, because they're all on the internet on our website. I think 14 was the highest we've had to contact trace because of one student. And that's, so we've been fortunate. I know some other districts, sometimes it's upwards of 30, 35 at a time.
Yeah, I've seen those releases.
Yeah.
You've said this a few times during the meetings, the public meetings. In-person learning is your preferred way of learning. Talk to me a little bit about that. What is it about online learning that doesn't work for students?
And even just talking just talk to people who drive professional development, who drive curriculum, whatever. We spend a lot of time perfecting teachers' practices in a classroom. The nonverbals of keeping attention. There are just things that, as far as management, keeping kids on task, that I don't know how you do it when they're behind a camera. Mm-hmm. And you're not viewing them. I mean, we'll have teachers, you don't draw attention to a kid in the classroom when they're not paying it. You just walk back towards them, and that gets them back in line. You can't observe that. And having been a teenage boy myself, just the distractions of knowing there's not someone making sure you're on task, that's difficult. And then we have some amazing things go on with our specials, musics, the arts, mm-hmm. our tech ed classes. They're doing everything they can to provide, but there's just nothing better in those classes than to be hands-on. And I've shared with you many times, the cyber education, I don't think anyone's totally opposed to a need for some of it. Right. But I will tell you, to the day I leave this earth, cyber school was never meant for the masses, and nor is this virtual online learning. It's just not. And grades are showing it, the performance of students, and we've got 35 back in the last 2-3 weeks because midterm came out. The kids didn't carry. Not unexpectedly, kids didn't carry through. At the younger levels, the K to 4, it's almost impossible for them to be online without a parent being there. So, or a grandparent, right, or someone else. So they're helping keep that child maybe focused and online. But as they get older, a 10th grader, 11th grader, there needs to be no one there at their house while they're online. And I just, that would be challenging for any teenager to stay. I mean, it's challenging for them to stay online stay focused for 6 periods in the room. I mean, we spend a lot of money. We've spent a lot of money over the years on technology to make classrooms more exciting and things like that. And although I do believe our teachers have done an amazing job, and in some ways, in looking at the glass half full, it's really grown exponentially, their technological abilities. There's still limits to what you can do.
That sort of leads into my next question, because the state announced that school districts can postpone the testing until the fall, and maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, and you can talk about it a little bit more, but wouldn't it make more sense to know where kids are, before you get to the next grade level, so we can say, here's what we need to work on? Because you skipped testing last year, right? And so if you do it again this year, you would think that you would want to know where kids basically are, because this year has been very challenging. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
I'll gladly speak to that. There'll probably be a couple parts to this, okay, and I may run you down a rabbit hole here. That's not uncharacteristic, is it, Justin? Yeah. The first part, we are planning our testing second, third week of May.
Okay.
We've been in school. We've been virtual, as we discussed prior to the break, 4 after Thanksgiving, because we do have that Monday off, and 5 after the week of January 4th. The rest of the time we've been in school, and there's really no reason, if we're going to give them, we don't, professionally and ethically, there's really no reason we shouldn't. I mean, we've been in school, although it's been disrupted at times. Another piece to that, I'm not sure what the benefit would be, okay, to delaying them to the fall. And I say that, I'm thinking if you delay them to the fall, probably the earliest they could be administered would probably be the first or second week of October. Mm-hmm. So that compounds an issue. It really compounds an issue into 2 really worrisome points for me. We know there's loss over the summer. And they've been talking since I've been in education, shortening summer breaks.
That's very common, yeah.
Yeah. So we go there. You're going to have that long break. So when we come back, like the 13th or 14th, whatever that Monday is in August, we'll have, and you know what will happen? People are going to be reviewing the previous year's material. And it really causes a problem for ninth grade teachers, because the eighth graders are leaving and they're not in just a middle school thing now. Now they're going off to an algebra, a Spanish. Where do you review their reading or their writing from? And so that's an issue. But even further, I believe students and teachers and parents are under an incredible amount of stress come spring for these tests and want them to be proficient or advanced, that we would probably end up taking about 7 weeks away of preparation for the spring 22 tests. I will go back on one point on data, and knowing where the kids are. I never have a problem with being held accountable and having tests to show us accountable. But I think it'd be short-sighted for anyone at the state or anyone in the area, with all the professional development we've done over the years with benchmarking, knowing where kids are at. I'd be very careful, and I, as a superintendent, will never come here and tell you, without those PSSAs, we don't know where our kids are at. I won't do that, because if that's not a good message, and it's really not a true message. Our teachers, other districts, they know where their kids are at. We benchmark them at the beginning of the year to know who's going to need the extra help to maybe potentially get them over the hump and get them to proficient, or maybe get a child from proficient to advanced. We're benchmarking every year to start, and that's real data. And one of the few flaws with the PSSAs, because it's not as high stake and it's not the end all see all that it once was about 5-6 years ago. Those PSSAs, that's quite literally in August, September, now cold data for teachers. What it truly does is allow teachers from the previous year to look, okay, where were our strengths? Where do we need to look to improve next year? But as far as those students for the incoming year, most schools are benchmarking their students to start the school year. So I guess I have mixed feelings, but we're going to do them. I think most of the schools in our area here are going to do them.
Right.
But in fairness now, across the other people across the state, there's a lot of districts that haven't been back in school.
Because of the high case numbers.
Yeah. And we're fortunate enough to get back in. So it's pretty easy for me to sit here on a high pedestal or a high horse and say, we're taking them. When we haven't had some of the variables some of the other people are facing.
Now, backing up here a little bit to the fall, something near and dear to your heart, sports, wrestling. Do you feel like you guys had a successful season, not necessarily in terms of wins or losses, but in terms of being able to do what you do and allow the students to participate?
Well, we'll go back and I guess reflect. You asked me what it was like in the spring. If we would have lost all those sports, all the proms, all those activities in the spring, I may have answered that question differently.
Okay.
Because we've lost that stuff in the spring. Just to be able to have seasons, it's a relief. Do we wish we could have done more, had more? Yes. But I guess the spring of 2020 really put some perspective on what could happen. I mean, that was a total loss for baseball, softball, track, proms, graduations. So I guess would I have loved for more? We got to pull off a band concert. It was a beautiful fall. We got outside. So if you ask a child this year that performed their band concert, are they completely happy that they had it? No, but it's a lot better than not having one in the spring last year. The seasons we've had. So I guess that's really if you look at the glass half full, we're thankful that we got what we got in. I do believe everyone's tried their best to get kids on the floor, on the field, on the mat, as well as they could.
So how about prom and graduation? As of right now, the plan is to go forward with it?
We are moving forward.
Okay.
Our prom is at the Silver Moon up in Lewisburg. We on average about 175, 176 attendees. Their facility is more than capable of handling that. So those who want to go to the prom, parents allow them to go to the prom. We're having a prom. Graduation, I think you heard the other night at our board meeting, we're set for Wednesday, June 2nd. First rain date is Thursday, June 3rd. Second rain date's Friday, June 4th.
And people aren't going to complain.
Because they want to be there.
Yeah.
And if we're outside, we can spread the people we're responsible for out, and the people way up in the stands. That's a whole different situation. But we think, again, that was the toughest. If we can't make up what is probably for us about 30 days of education, when you consider 2 weeks for testing, end of year stuff, overtime, shame on us. But what we can never get back are those performances.
Right.
Band concerts, baseball games,
Those
softball
hours,
games,
yeah.
proms, graduations. That is one of the biggest reasons we do what we do in public education. We get kids to work together, react together, interact together. And that's something they can't do at home behind a computer screen. And I believe for years the business world has told you we are really starting to lack the soft skills with their young employees. And I think this age of kids not being in person with people, I think that's really having an even greater impact on soft skills.
Last thing I wanted to touch on before we're done then, sounds like the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is going to be available for the educators. Any idea how that's going to roll out for school districts, or is there going to be like, hey, we're coming in for a week and we're going to go to this school, and do you think it's going to be a mandatory thing for Lime Mountain?
No,
I know there's a lot to unpack there, but
no, it won't be mandatory. At this time, it's not.
Right.
And first, I want to make sure that you understand I'm giving really good credit to the IUs on this one. They're carrying the ball, distributing it. So for me to say they're thinking the first round is Wednesday through Saturday next week or whatever, that's not any disappointment that we don't have the exact times, days.
that's early still, though.
Yeah. We've been allocated 69 shots, vaccinations for the first round. The IU has done a great job of percentaging, allocating across the districts. We're going to go with it. Our community has been pretty flexible. Our staff, I did put some communications out today to staff and to our board. I'll probably have to do an alert now to the community, to the parents. I'll probably do it maybe Sunday night, letting them know we might need some flexibility this coming week. If Lime Mountain 69 are called to go on Wednesday, obviously they're not all teachers. The governor is really pushing elementary first because of that constant contact, special ed, aides, things like that. Yeah, it does. Justin, for the first time in a long time, there's a plan, and it's exciting.
Yeah.
So I refuse to worry about some of the problems we're going to have trying to get through those couple days, because there's finally a plan. There's someone's taken the bull by the horn, so to speak, and people are getting vaccinated. So, but getting back, probably have to let some parents know that there's a real potential. We may have to call an Act 80 day. We could go asynchronous and tape some stuff, but again, I'm not crazy about the asynchronous. I can live more with the synchronous because there's interaction with teachers. But if out of those 69, I'm going to say at least 50 of them are probably direct in-classroom teachers. We have 84. Okay. We're gonna have to come up with an alternative plan, and until we know when it rolls out, and you can as soon as I know, I'll let you know. But I do want to reiterate, it is okay that we don't know. We're doing the surveys. All the districts are doing surveys. They want to do this right, and a lot of credit goes to the people organizing that. And there's certainly no fault. I mean, the governor rolled this out yesterday or the day before.
Right.
It might have been yesterday. And the IU has a plan in place, and they're rolling it out. So
what's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, what's the goal here, Justin?
Yeah.
It's to move forward and get kids back in classrooms. And I believe the governor even said he's so committed to this that they may look at an emergency day for people. I think this is good. And we were closed all spring. One day for people to go get vaccinated, and if there's a bad day after, if that's what they're recommending, I can live with 2 days. Let's be part of the solution, and this is part of the solution.
Okay, well, on that, I think we're out of time. So thank you for joining us for One-on-One. Thank you, Dave.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for watching One-on-One. Be sure to keep an eye out for upcoming editions.